We are back. Welcome to season 2 of Smidgen. We are so excited to be back with you guys, and so many good things have been happening around Red Stick Spice. We are now a Milk Street partner location for cooking classes, and I couldn't be happier about it. We're going to dive in with Rosie Gill. She's the education director for Milk Street, and we're going to talk all about the Milk Street way, how we're bringing that Milk Street way from Boston to Louisiana, and teaching our customers all about how to approach recipes from a flavor perspective and really digging in on how to use spices. So after talking to Rosie, we're going to jump in and do a really fun exercise, super simple, humble food, chickpeas, and we're going to do them 2 ways, and it is going to answer that question, how do I use spices? That cooking segment with those chickpeas, we did in front of a live audience. We did podcast live. And it brought forward a new technique that is absolutely essential for when you're working with spices. It's all about blooming spices. My name is Ann Milnick. I own Red Stick Spice Company. I call myself the tireless champion of home cooks, and this is Smidgen.
You're listening to Smidgen, the Red Stick Spice Company podcast, located directly between a dash and a pinch, where it's all about the tips, tricks, and tools to make home cooking easy and doable. We did our research, and it's proven mealtime's where it's at. And now your host, Ann Milnick.
Rosemary Gill is the Director of Education at Milk Street Cooking School, an educator dedicated to helping people create lasting home cooking habits. She oversees the development of cooking classes for the general public as well as Milk Street's community initiatives. Previously, her work was with nonprofit organizations engaged in improving food security through educational means. She has leadership and teaching experience, having served in executive, managerial, and educational roles for various organizations, including America's Test Kitchen, 18 Reasons, Medford Farms Market, the Somerville Arts Council, Spur, Garden for the Environment, and the Boys and Girls Clubs of San Francisco, and more. Welcome, Rosie.
Hi, thank you so much for having me on the show.
This is super fun. I'm so excited to be here with you.
Same. I really enjoyed getting to know you in Boston.
Well, we had a blast in Boston. So to explain to listeners what this is all about, Red Stick Spice in Baton Rouge is now a Milk Street certified partner location to teach cooking classes.
Yes, you are.
Yeah, and I went to Boston and trained under you guys and met lots of other small gourmet store retailers around the country who are doing the same thing I am. And my brain was just like exploding when I left. So you guys do a really cool chickpea demonstration that speaks to how to bloom spices. And we talk about this in my shop all the time with customers. How do I use spices? And I was like, this is it. We've discovered how we explain it. And we had an early flight the next morning. We get back to Baton Rouge. It's midday. And I'm like, I'm doing it. I'm making the chickpeas. And I lost every bit of culinary knowledge I'd ever known, and I coated those chickpeas in baking soda.
Oh, no.
And as soon as I did it, I said, well, Anne, this is not correct. Rosie did not use baking soda, and it foamed, and it was super weird. So just so everyone understands, you coat the chickpeas in cornstarch, not baking soda.
Right.
But that was so exciting to me, and I can't tell you how many times I've done that exercise in the store just since we've been back from Boston. And it's like light bulb moment, split the atom. It's like the coolest thing. So I want to talk more about that in a minute. But like I said, we are now a partner location for Milk Street Cooking Schools, and you guys talked a lot about the Milk Street way. Can you describe what the Milk Street way is?
Sure. There are 2 ways we talk about it in the cooking school. So the Milk Street way in terms of recipes or cooking is looking for simplicity, boldness, and contrast. So our recipes have a promise that they actually won't be technically difficult. And through really simple light bulb moments like the chickpeas, which we'll explain later for your listeners, you can transform very familiar ingredients and dishes. So we don't want people laboring over the stove for hours. We don't want people confused. We want people to maybe jump off one bridge with us with a new ingredient or a new flavor profile, but not have to jump off 3 bridges. So they feel like they're empowered. And we do that by having simple recipes that have really bold flavor and that feature a lot of contrast. Other way we think about it at the cooking school, is our teaching philosophy. So the Milk Street Way for our teaching philosophy, which I think is important for your listeners to know now that you are a licensed venue for our classes, is that our classes will be experiential and learner focused, meaning that we really put the learner first when we're developing our lesson plans, and not any objectives or goals that I may have as a teacher. But if I put myself in my students' shoes, how do I remove all the noise from a lesson plan so that they get access to the fundamental learning objectives of the class in a clear and concise way, and in a way that's fun, because fun is the absolute best strategy for learning. If you have a good time, you're more likely to come back, you're more likely to keep cooking.
Absolutely. I 100% agree. I talk to my employees all the time. We don't like it when a dish doesn't turn out great, but as long as we make it a teachable moment and their brain is exploding when they leave, we can get through those moments in the event that something doesn't go quite right.
I think I told this to you guys too. I say to my students all the time, I actually don't care if you like our food. I care that you understand why our food tastes the way it does. So I'm trying to teach people how to cook food they love, and they may not love a certain recipe. So you're kinder than I am. I'm trying to teach people critical cooking skills. And maybe I need to take a lesson from your book of politeness.
Well, that leads me to asking about recipes, because written recipes are a big, big part of our cooking classes. Customers are constantly emailing me with the mistakes I've made in recipes, or why is this worded this way? And I read once, I don't know if it was Michael Pollan or Michael Bittman, I believe it was one of the two, who said, at their core, recipes are not great teachers. Speak to that a little bit, because I know in some of the curriculums I've gotten, there isn't always a written recipe or formula involved.
First, I would say is that I've been running cooking schools for a decade, and I've taught thousands of classes at this point. And there are some people that are recipe followers, and there's some people that are not, and there's every color and variation in between. And there's no right or wrong way. So if you're a recipe follower, great, be a recipe follower. If you're an improv cook, that's awesome. I think what's most important for a cooking school is to teach students why cooking works, so that whether they're cooking improv, and therefore if you're an improv cook, you'll understand why you're making certain choices as you move about the kitchen. And if you're a recipe follower, you'll understand why the recipe writer is asking you to do certain things. That way you're the one in control and you're in the driver's seat. And I think a lot of vulnerability I see in students is that they don't understand the why behind the recipe. So they're doing things sort of blindly and they hope it works. So that's one thing I have to say about recipes, is that there's no right or wrong about whether you like them or not. It's just who you are as a cook, and that's fine. It is really important that a recipe is written well. For us, and I think for any company worth its salt, it is your best advocate. It is proof of your concept. It is your marketing. If your recipes work and they work well, if people follow them, then people know whether they trust you or not. And if your food is the type of food that they want to continue to make. So making sure that a recipe is written correctly, that it is clear, the commas are in the right place so that people know if it's 2 cups walnuts chopped or 2 cups of chopped walnuts. I guess that's not commas, that's word ordering, is really important. But I do agree that they're not great teachers, because a good recipe is also not super wordy, and it's not going to tell you why you're doing certain things. I have written recipes that way for classes, but they won't make it through the editorial process for a cookbook. So they are not great teachers, but they can be great guides. A great teacher helps you understand what that guide is telling you to do and why.
I love that. And I don't get super upset or even feisty when they find my mistakes. And honestly, what you said a second ago about trust, they trust me enough to come back to me and ask me to clarify.
Oh, and we all make mistakes. I tell my students that, I tell my teachers that all the time. It is fine if you make a mistake. We're all human. We make mistakes. What I think is, and it's fine if you don't know everything. What's important is that you know how to respond to it. So I completely agree with you. That comma is going to go in the wrong place. It doesn't matter. What matters is all the emotion you're putting into your community and that your students trust you. And then they're going to feel confident to be able to come to you and say, can you help me? I don't understand this. It may be an error.
Exactly. Okay. So speaking of trust, you've entrusted me and several other gourmet stores around the country to be Milk Street partner locations. First of all, talk about, when did you all decide that you wanted other folks to teach the Milk Street way? How did that program come about?
From the beginning, we knew that we wanted to have a national platform for the cooking school because everything else Milk Street does has a national, if not a global platform. And we didn't want the cooking school to be only accessible to our Boston audience or for our audience that travels to Boston. We're also young. Tomorrow we celebrate our 3rd anniversary.
Happy anniversary.
Thanks. It takes a while to find your rhythm in any new business. And I know cooking school. So it takes a while for us to find our rhythm. And you don't want to put the cart before the horse and open 20 cooking schools and staff 20 cooking schools with 20 different audiences at the same time. So we knew we had this goal. And then when we got introduced to the Gourmet Catalog, the opportunity was just too good to turn up, as we were able to support independent small businesses like yours and increase access to our classes by partnering with Gourmet Catalog. And it allows us to do it in a way that makes us nimble and still be more flexible. And I don't actually think we have goals now at all to open other Milk Street cooking schools, because we have all of these wonderful partners such as yourself at 22 locations around the country, and hopefully more soon, that are doing a fabulous job representing us and can do it in a way that makes sense for their demographic. It takes so much time to get to know a community. You know your community. You know how to now take a Milk Street recipe, take our teaching philosophy, and make it work for your community. And that's knowledge that would take us years and years and years to learn if we tried to do that by building our own brick and mortars.
So for me, as a cooking instructor, to have certified with you all, and I'm saying this to other gourmet stores around the country, it is a dream come true for me to receive from you full curriculums and written plans. And I taught on Tuesday night, I taught Not My Mother's Chicken.
Oh, good.
Yeah. And it was sensational, a complete smash. And what was interesting to me was what the front runner recipe was, because it was the recipe when my staff and I were preparing and going through. We always have a recipe in a cooking class where we say, that's going to be a tough sell. And the one we thought was the tough sell was the winner of the night.
Which one?
The Somali chicken soup.
That soup is so good.
It's mind-blowing.
It's quintessential Milk Street. So it was actually one of the first recipes we developed, and it was developed in partner with one of our first cooking teachers, Nimo Mahmoud Hassan, who's maybe the best cook I've ever met in my entire life. And she lives here in Boston. Why it's quintessential Milk Street is it sort of throws a lot of conventional Western knowledge about cooking out the door and simplifies things. So you don't brown anything. You throw raw chicken in a pot with some onions and a few spices, and you make this very mild base. And then from there, it's all about texture and contrast and flavor, but it's customizable. I love it. So you get raw vegetables. You don't cook carrots until they're soft, or cook potatoes until they're soft, or have soft egg noodles. You have this wonderful, mild, gentle broth, and then you've got crunchy arugula and fresh scallions and peppery radishes, and then those two sauces. One is like blow the top of your head off spicy, and the other one's just got all this incredible warmth from spices, but it's not spicy. And so you get this depth of flavor, but it's still really fresh and bright. And people can make it warm, hotter, or crunchier, or spicier to their like. So it really is the simplest process to this transformative idea of what chicken soup can be. And Chris wanted me to base an entire class just on that soup. When she made it for him at Milk Street, he said, well, we're done. That's the best thing we've ever made at Milk Street.
I love that. And that soup finally helped me address When customers come in, they say, oh no, I don't like spicy food. And we try to explain to them that we're talking about spicy that can be super flavorful and complex, but not necessarily hot.
Oh, right. Spicy versus spiced are really different things. And they can overlap, but spiced is maybe one of the most important characteristics of great food. Spicy is often up to personal preference.
We usually get the question, we always get the question, how do I use spices? And, for the 7 years I've owned the store, I've tried to figure out what am I doing wrong in not answering this question. I have to say, no one walked away from that class asking, how do I use spices? But I'm curious how you would answer that if a customer said, hey, Rosie, how do I use spices?
Well, I think what people are really asking is how do I approach something that's unfamiliar? And so I try when people ask a question is to ask a few other questions to find out maybe what the underlying impetus for the question is. So I really think what someone's saying is, I am interested, but I don't know how to start. The easiest way to get to start is just to teach someone how to make a very simple spiced oil, which doesn't have to be spicy. Again, it's fry some cumin seeds in some oil and show them how you can just drizzle that on top of some roasted potatoes. And right away, it smells wonderful. It tastes wonderful. Your kitchen has a whole new aroma. And it's one spice. I think a lot of people think spices means this very complicated sort of alchemy of 1,000 bottles and powders. And I think if you start really simple, you choose one really good spice, then just show them what it can do to something they're very familiar with. Just drizzle a cumin-infused butter on top of mashed potatoes, and people will feel really differently about their mashed potatoes. So you just need to start slow, find out why people are really asking, get them hooked on one technique, and then you can say, all right, well, let's try 2 spices. Let's try 3. I mean, that's an approach I take all the time in the cooking school, is just don't give them too much information. Give them one technique, see how they respond, and then get increasingly more complicated as you realize and get to know them better. That's one of the joys of teaching, is that it's not a recipe. There's a person in front of me. I can read their reaction. I can see if they like something or they don't, if they understand, if they don't.
I'm teaching 60-minute Spice Master on Monday.
Oh, good.
Okay, well, first of all, I put it up on our website and I made a mistake and people kept, it was selling like crazy and people were emailing me saying, I cannot wait to see how you do this. And I thought, what are they talking about? And I realized I'd written 60-second Spice Master.
Oh, 60-second.
So I was like, okay, well, we're good, but we're maybe not that good. So it is it's 60-minute Spice Master. So I'm excited to see how the exercise with the lentil soup goes as we layer one step as it goes along with layering the flavors on that lentil soup. But that's where that chickpea exercise is going to come in. So take our listeners through the thinking behind the blooming spices for the chickpeas.
Sure. There are 2 ways to change the flavor, 2 main ways to change the flavor of spices. Let me retract that. There are 3 main ways. There are 2 that involve cooking and 1 that does not. So you have whole spices. You change their flavor when you grind them. So mechanically, you can change their flavor because you increase surface area, release more, break cell walls, all the reasons that a grated carrot tastes different than a whole carrot, sweeter and whatnot, happens with mechanical when you grind versus whole. But the 2 main cooking ways that people think of when they're working with spices is you can toast spices, which is dry heat, or you can bloom spices, which is when spices come into contact with fat, because there are a lot of fat-soluble flavor compounds in spices, meaning they will only be apparent to you if they come into contact with fat and are quote-unquote released. You can do that very slowly overnight. You could steep bay leaves and cardamom seeds in cream and then make a wonderfully lightly aromatic whipped cream. But the fast way to do it is to bloom in hot fat, because heat catalyzes or speeds up the chemical reactions. So with the chickpeas, what happens is you coat them in cornstarch, not baking soda, And they're well dried, and then you coat them in cornstarch, and that just helps to dry them. It also helps with the browning process. And then you fry the chickpeas in oil. It's not really, it's not a ton of oil. It's not like you're deep frying them. You're shallow frying them, sauteing them in a very hot pan. And just like with a steak, you don't move them because you want to create browning. They're crispy chickpeas and you want to get this depth of flavor. And then you turn the heat off and you add in ground spices and salt at that point. And the reason you do it at the end is that ground spices burn really quickly. They have all the surface area because you've ground them up. And if you were to leave them in the pan undisturbed with the chickpeas, you would burn them. So the residual heat of the chickpeas that have been browned in the oil blooms the spices, brings out all the flavors, but protects them from burning. So you have this immensely aromatic, crispy, salty, little bit sweet, spiced chickpea that is absolutely addictive. And how we run it in class is we challenge people to build their own spice blend. And then we do a little comparison and everyone can taste everyone else's creations. We have yet to meet a student who makes a dud of a spice blend. I mean, I really reassure students that you're not going to fail. These are delicious and they become the best topping for butternut squash soup. They're a great appetizer when people come over for an evening meal. I serve them with a glass of rosé. They're great in a salad. So they're just this phenomenal trick up your sleeve as a home cook.
It was so much fun doing that exercise. And my mixture, the other classmates described mine as cinnamon toast crunch. I was definitely like feeling the pumpkin spice vibe then. But your co-instructor that night said that in one class, someone used like a ton of cardamom and she thought, oh gosh, what's going to happen here? And she was like, they were delicious.
Well, I think what happens is we do help people. So we give them a structure with their spice blend. So spices you can group them in categories. And what we say is they're just a handful of rules for making the spice blend for this exercise. And that is, it has to be more than one spice because one does not a blend make. So a minimum of 2 spices. We don't let people use more than 3 because then for 60-minute Spice Master becomes, 6-day Spice Master. And then we've grouped the spices. We put them out on trays in different sort of flavor profiles. So there's the warming sweet spices like cinnamon and allspice. And then there are the pungent spices like turmeric or cumin. There's the mentholy minty spices, which would be cardamom and dried mint or dried oregano. There's the spicy spices, so cayenne, all the dried peppers. And people have to choose their 3 spices from at least 2 categories. And what that does is that forces them to build in contrast and balance. So someone who chooses a lot of cardamom is going to have to match it with something that will balance it. So they may choose something pungent like cumin or citrusy like coriander. And that will mean that the cardamom may be very forward, but it's not going to be overwhelming. A good teacher is always going to give people some guidelines. We want to set our students up to succeed.
So I predict that exercise on Monday is going to have a lot of people getting more comfortable and asking me, okay, what do I need in my cabinet? And I know that's really personal. I have to ask more questions like what type of cooking do you do? But could you name some basic spices you think almost anyone needs in their cabinet? And then take that a step further and say, what would be, say, maybe 3 sort of like out there advanced spices to add in?
Great. I think there are 9 spices that make you able to sort of travel the world in your kitchen. Meaning that with these 9 spices, you can combine them in different ways to really have very different flavor profiles. And those are cumin, coriander, cardamom, smoked paprika, turmeric, cayenne, ground ginger, cinnamon, and allspice. Like I said, they touch in all of the different categories, and combined in different ways, you can make food that would be appropriate in tacos, that would be appropriate in a curry, that would be appropriate in a Southeast Asian dish. Very broadly, but there's a lot of versatility in that 9. Then for more advanced, there are 4. So I'm going to take a liberty and not do just 3. I really encourage people to explore the world of peppers because we always say salt and pepper together, but salt and pepper should be divorced. Salt has a scientific purpose in food. Pepper is a spice. And I mean both dried peppers, like Aleppo pepper and ancho and gochugaru and marash, they really give you an awesome change and can be substituted in really easily anywhere that you use red pepper flakes or cayenne, but also pepper berries. So my favorite black pepper is called comet's tail pepper. It's wonderful. It's floral and beautiful and super elegant. But also people should explore pink peppercorns and Szechuan peppercorns, which technically aren't actually pepper, but we categorize them that way and people should explore them. And you can, again, Szechuan peppercorns a little bit different because it behaves differently in food, but pink peppercorns taste really different than black pepper, but you can use them in place of it as a finishing spice or a finishing crack like you do black pepper, but you get straight pink sort of blizzard on top of your food that's really beautiful. So peppers are one. Another advanced one would be nigella seeds. They're in the onion family and they look like black sesame seeds, but they have a really smoky and oniony taste, and I use them everywhere. I put them in eggs. I use them as a garnish in salads. They're used a lot in Middle Eastern cooking, and I always have a ton in my pantry. And sumac is the third. It's a source of acidity. It is hard to find for spice blends, so it's tart and has red berry flavors, and it's a great thing if you work really hard to say get the perfect crust on fried fish, right? The batter is crispy and shattering, and you know that the squeeze of lemon juice is actually going to make wherever the lemon falls a little soggy. If you sprinkle sumac on it instead, you get that bright acidity, but you also keep all the texture from your fried fish. So I love sumac. And the last is really advanced, blue turmeric. Blue turmeric was a revelation to me. It's not as pungent as yellow turmeric. It tastes there's a little bit of a ginger note there. And the first time I used it, all I did was stir some into some slow simmered greens that were really velvety, and it was amazing. So that's my most advanced, but if you can hunt it down, I would really recommend getting some blue turmeric.
I've got to talk about blue turmeric. Is it blue?
Yeah.
What shade?
Gray blue.
Okay.
Yeah.
And you're buying it dried and ground, or you're buying a root?
You're buying it dried and ground. I haven't ever seen fresh blue turmeric root. You can find fresh golden turmeric, which is great. And I highly suggest if you ever find fresh turmeric to cook it up with fresh ginger root. And it's a whole different flavor than the dried versions of both. But I've never seen fresh blue turmeric. Obviously it exists because that's how you get the dried ground one. I've just never seen it myself.
Okay. Well, you just taught the spice lady some lessons here. That was amazing. Okay. Before we close out, I do want to ask, and we've already talked about the Somalian chicken soup, but think of a spice transformation story that you can tell us where something was just like, you were just like, oh, because of the spices.
I mean, I'd say the Somali chicken soup is even a little advanced. I mean, it's amazing that everyone loved it, but those are complicated spice blends. Berbere is not a simple spice blend, and that's the paprika-based one that becomes a paste. So I love that people liked that, but my simplest spice revelation story, I have two. One is a simple chili oil drizzled into butternut squash soup. I was so sick of butternut squash soup, butternut squash soup everywhere. I just was bored, totally bored. I made a very mild butternut squash soup base. It was so boring, it like almost doesn't warrant a recipe. Onions, celery, roasted squash, water, salt. And then what I did is I took a simple chili called furfa, which is a chocolatey smoked chili pepper, but you could use Aleppo pepper. You could use any single spice blend that you like that has a lot of depth of flavor. Really good cumin seeds would work, and a great paprika if you don't want something spicy. And I bloomed it. So I heated it gently in oil, this Urfa pepper, and I just drizzled it on top of the bowl with a flourish of finishing salt. It had this real depth of flavor and took baby food to adult food. And why I love using that story is I think a lot of parents who are hesitant to use spices because they're afraid their kids won't like what they make. And if you make your own spice oils at the end, you can serve the base to people who don't like flavor, as much flavor. And then the other people at the table who love a lot of flavor can eat the exact same dish, but drizzle on the spice blend. And so it's a way to streamline the cooking process for busy families, for busy adults, but not sacrifice at all with flavor.
So that was just a picky eater pro tip right there.
Yeah, there you go. Picky eater pro tip.
Yep.
And then the second way where spices totally transform something is in baking. 2 examples. So banana bread, if you brown the butter and then bloom ground cardamom in the brown butter, it totally transforms banana bread. And I love using that example because it's just one single spice. I'm not talking about a complicated spice blend. I'm not talking about a spice that's particularly hard to find. You brown butter and then you put in the ground cardamom into that hot fat, and it just completely changes run-of-the-mill banana bread into something much more interesting. And then ginger snap cookies, where often they'll have almost pumpkin spice blend. I put Chinese 5-spice in mine once, and I'm a convert. I can't go back. So you buy Chinese 5-spice, pre-blended at the grocery store. You can make your own. And I just substituted that in exactly 1-for-1 for whatever spice blend mix my ginger snaps called for, or my molasses cookies called for. And it was awesome because there's black pepper and fennel, so there's a little bit of a savory edge. And it makes your sweets so much more interesting when they're not just sweet.
Oh my gosh. Our minds are blown. First of all, we haven't had breakfast, but our minds are blown right now. Thank you, Rosie.
You're welcome.
Okay, so we need to find out how to find you, how to find Milk Street. So tell us all those things.
Okay, so Milk Street is at 177milkstreet.com is our website. And there's a link to the school there. And that's how you find me, because I spend a lot of time at the school. I'm spending a lot of time right now with the gourmet catalog stores and with our online cooking school. And April Dodd is our amazing cooking school manager, and she's spending a lot of time at our hands-on classes. And at 177milkstreet.com, you can find out all the information you want about our radio show and our TV show, which are both public media, about becoming a digital subscriber or a print subscriber to our magazine, and all the other amazing things we have going on, and including our store, which has some really cool products. I don't mean to plug another store, but some really cool products for very specialty things. If you decide that Milk Street's a flavor profile you like, then you can buy some fun things there. Otherwise, you can find me in my garden in Vermont, where I spend a lot of time on the weekends growing spices, because I grow herbs, and herbs become seeds, and a lot of those seeds become spices.
Can I come over?
Yes, anytime. I'm going up this weekend, though, to put it to bed because it's in Vermont. So you'll have to wait for 2020.
Rosie, thank you so much. This has been a blast.
I am delighted that you asked me to come on the show, and you are most welcome. Thank you for being a Milk Street Cooking School member.
Thanks, Rosie.
Have a good day.
You too. So how amazing is Rosie? That was an incredible interview. I love talking with her, and I can't tell folks how proud I am to be a partner location for Milk Street. So that starter kit, that is exactly the thing we need to answer our customers' frequent question, how do I use spices? I will say this though, I love what Rosie said, but I needed to add 2 more things to that list. We're in South Louisiana, so I've added roasted granulated garlic and roasted granulated onion and kept Rosie's list just as it was. And we're gonna offer that as a spice starter set. This is perfect for establishing a new kitchen, gift giving, or if you're just ready to sort of clean the slate and start over, this is a great starting point. The starter spice kit can be found at redstickspice.com or at our Jefferson Highway location in Mid-City in Baton Rouge, or our downtown location at Main Street. At checkout, enter Smidgen 15 to save 15% on that purchase. So we're going to put all those techniques to work in the kitchen with Lily. We're going to head in and make those chickpeas. Not only is this a teachable moment, this is a delicious snack that can be just in heavy rotation for you to have on hand for lunches, for cheese boards. Delicious. Let's head in and cook. All right, we are back. Welcome back to Smidgen. We are here at Red Stick Spice Company in Baton Rouge on Jefferson Highway. We're in the shop. Customers are here. Special guests are here, and we are in the test kitchen with Lily. So this is Podcast Live. We've got special guests in the audience watching as we do this live. Welcome. We're excited that you guys are here. Okay, we're going to get started with what we're doing so that we can get some browning happening, and then I'm going to explain why.
Got it.
You have a can of chickpeas.
I do.
That have been drained and dried. And we dried just on a sheet pan, single layer with paper towels, press them. You could leave them open for several hours. You just want to get them dry. Then they're in a bowl with cornstarch.
Okay.
Get your bowl of chickpeas and move that cornstarch over them. And I'm going to do the same to mine.
They look little snowballs.
Yeah. And then we're going to put them in our sieve. Oh, chickpea down. We're going to put them in our sieve and knock off the excess cornstarch. So get that cornstarch off of there. And I'm just going to borrow your sieve. Get those chickpeas in your hot oil.
It's hot.
Hot, neutral oil. Oil down.
Avocado.
Pure avocado oil, no flavor, just a neutral oil. You could also do this with pecan oil that we have here in Louisiana. You want kind of a high heat oil. And those are going to start sizzling. And be sure to knock your heat all the way up.
Got it.
And get them in a single layer. Shake your skillet. Get them in a single layer. And then we're going to kind of leave them alone. Just kind of let them do their thing. But the cornstarch is going to help brown them. And it's going to help them get nice and crispy on the outside, which is what we want. Why are we doing this? So I am now a Milk Street partner location for cooking classes. I went and certified in Boston. And
Fun.
Yeah, it was a blast. It really, really was. And this was an exercise that we did when we went to training. So Milk Street is similar to me, where they're all about sort of template recipes, not basic recipes, but good, solid templates. And then it's all about the spices is how you make the magic happen.
All right.
We did this exercise to help wrap our brains around when to use spices, how much spice to use, and what spices do in a pan of food that I'm going to call a chickpea a humble food.
It's neutral.
Neutral, blank canvas, and it is going to give us a great way to taste the spices without the food taking it over. So this was like...
So you can play with different spices here.
Right. So this was
Need more oil.
mind-blowing. Please, a little Jojo oil. Mind-blowing to me because, I've owned the store for 7 years and we taste a lot of spices. You can taste anything in the shop. We taste a lot of spices and we always use a neutral oil. That made sense to me. Maybe not an olive oil. Olive oil has a flavor.
Right.
So you can taste that. We always use a neutral oil, but we use bread. And we use a really, really simple white bread that we make here in the shop. But I just wanted a really neutral carrier vehicle for these flavors. When we have the time, we taste them with potatoes. That's another great way to really get the essence of what's going on with the spice. This was super cool to me because I like potatoes, I like bread, but what's fun about this is you end up with this fun little snack at the end.
Or a condiment.
Yeah.
This could be a lot of things.
Yeah, so these are going to get brown, these are going to get crispy, and then we're going to hit them with spices.
Okay.
Pretty fantastic. I got too many chickpeas in my pan.
Yeah, you do.
And I need some fat. We're being super patient as they brown, and that's one thing at Milk Street that they talked about, and you and I say it in class all the time. We're like, stop poking, stop prodding, leave it alone.
Let it do its thing.
Let the metal and the heat and the protein and the sugars in the food do their thing, which is the Maillard reaction. If you want GBD, golden brown and delicious, you've got to allow the science that's happening here to happen. But everyone wants to flip immediately, poke, prod, move things, stir, and sometimes you just need to leave it alone. What's going to happen is once we start to get some browning, which that is happening for me, and now you can start moving them around to even up the brown. See?
Yep. Look at this.
Oh, look at yours. It's one big piece. Move these around to even up the browning. And then once we get them to a nice browned point, we are going to, when we're ready to finish up, we're going to hit them with spices. And what's going to happen with the spices is the spices are going to bloom in the fat. Blooming is one way to transform a spice. Grinding is another way. Toasting is another way. You normally wouldn't toast a ground spice. You would toast whole spices. But for ground spices that we're going to use, the fat in the pan is going to bloom the spices. So that Maillard reaction happens. There's some caramelization of sugars. But the spices just get bigger and broader, and they kind of go in a different direction. They are cooking in the fat, but the fat helps ensure that they don't burn. When we teach this, you're getting super brown. Play with your heat a little bit there. When we teach this in our 60-minute Spice Master, we set out spices for guests to blend their own spice blend.
So how do you guess that? Like, how do you pick those?
Well, we help out by categorizing them. So there's 4 categories of spices. There are pungent and grounding spices. Those are things like onion and garlic and turmeric and coriander, of all things, and cumin. There's fiery, that's your heat. Those are your chilies, that's your cayenne. There's warm, that's cinnamon, allspice, clove, nutmeg. And I thought cardamom would be in warm, but it's not. Cardamom's in menthol. So there's a menthol category, and that's where your mint, marjoram, oregano, sumac is in there, but cardamom is in there, which I thought was really, really interesting.
Yeah, definitely would have thought it was warm.
So we have them blend a spice blend working with from each of the 4 categories, but quantity is up to them. They have a 2 teaspoon goal. They need 2 teaspoons of a spice blend. They can do that math in the 4 categories however they want. And we got some really, really interesting spice blends when we taught this class. It was super fun. So
there are no rules. Like,
no.
Like you don't want to go heavy. This is what I'm always wondering about. Do you want to go heavier on your onions and garlics and then lighter on your cumins and your cardamoms?
So when we were there, a gentleman did his spice blend, and it was almost 3/4 cardamom. And I said, well, we're all going to eat a candle. This is not going to be good. And it was fine. It was super interesting and really showed me that some of these spices that I get a little nervous about, like, don't put too much of that one, that actually you can probably be pretty heavy-handed with it as long as what you're cooking and what you're balancing it with is working out. We did not blend our own today. We grabbed 2 spice blends that are in our store and are big favorites. I grabbed Burberry. Burberry is Ethiopian chicken rub, spicy.
Spicy.
Like scalp sweating.
Right.
Spicy. Has fenugreek in it, onion, garlic, just all these beautiful things in it. Makes a lovely pot of lentils. Of course, Ethiopian chicken is fantastic. And then we went the complete opposite and pulled a blend that we blend here called garlic maple. So this is exactly what it sounds like, sweet with that nice garlicky note to it. And excellent on Thanksgiving turkey, excellent on...
I do sweet potatoes and butternut squash.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And it does love chicken.
Really, really good. So, and with that, virtually no heat, I would say.
No.
What we're going to add to it is a little bit of salt and a little bit of sugar. So when we blend our own in our Spice Master class, the salt and sugar, almost all spice blends have some salt and sugar in them. Salt and sugar do really wonderful things on our palate. They're great carriers for flavor. And it's great for this exercise because it helps other flavors shine. You could certainly leave it out, but just know that most spice blends do have a little bit of salt and sugar in them. We're going to combine our 2 teaspoons of spice blend with our salt and sugar. And I'm not going to do that with my finger because then I'm going to take out my contacts later. And it's going to be a sad, sad day.
You want me to do it?
Would you? And lilies,
I have contacts in too.
Lilies are there. Mine are not. Mine are still being a little pokey, but I'm getting close. They're browning on the outside. They're starting to also feel lighter as I move them. So that, if ever you've cooked kale and all of a sudden it starts to feel lighter, you're getting to that kale chip
moment, but we're definitely cooking out a lot of that liquid, and they're getting lighter, and they're going to be crispy when we eat them. You are ready to go. Do it.
So when they hit the heat, when this hits the heat, that's when it starts blooming.
Right. When it hits the fat and the heat, it's going to start blooming. And you should smell a big transformation from what it smelled like raw. And I know you guys have tasted it raw. We've served it up to you guys. And what happens in the heat. Start around. This cooking segment's on the heels of my interview with Rosie Gill. She was my instructor at Milk Street. She is very, very smart, so good at what she does, and was a world of information for me when it came to cooking classes. And we posed her with a pretty difficult question. What is that spice mix for a starter pantry? Like, what do you want in that pantry? And she had 9 essential spices for the pantry, and I loved that. But this South Louisiana girl looked at that list, and there was no onion or garlic.
No.
So I wanted so badly for it to be a under 10 number, not take it to the 11 essential spices. But I had to add onion and garlic, y'all. I added in onion and garlic, and we have compiled the list of the 11 essential spices. What is cool about her list is from those 11 spices, you could cobble together a Latin blend, a Middle Eastern blend, an Indian blend, a Cajun Creole blend. Like, the things that are in that list are spices like cinnamon, cumin, coriander, things that cross all of these regions. Right. When that dish, you're inspired by that dish, but it calls for that spice blend that you don't have, you can very likely pull it together with this pantry set.
Okay, I'm going to say this right now. That needs to be a gift box.
Yep.
That's
you and Catherine think alike. Our producer Catherine
that.
said the same thing. Okay, I'm turning these off. I'm getting my spice blend in here.
I'm ready. I'm smelling you. Yummy.
How's it smell?
It's fantastic.
Okay, so that Burberry is spicy, but super fun and super tasty. It is the kind of spicy, like my husband, I make Burberry chicken with lentils, and he's got this much rice and that much Burberry chicken, and he's just kind of like weeping and his nose is running, but he's like getting thirds,
right.
Like it's so delicious.
A little addictive.
Yeah. And you can't get enough of it, but it is quite spicy, but so spicy in a fun way. That smells amazing. And what I'm getting now that I understand what Burberry is, that fenugreek. Yeah. So nice. That kind of butterscotch thing happening. All right. These are blazing hot. We're going to plate these. What would you do with these?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. So this, I immediately see, like, why can't we top a curry with that as a condiment?
Oh, you can definitely top it.
Crunchy.
Yeah. Or a grain bowl.
Grain bowls for sure. I see this with like stuffed sweet potatoes because it's kind of, because it's got all those things I would cook a sweet potato with.
Yeah.
And then your idea about hummus, that's genius.
Right. Make some hummus, but then
swirl it on
sizzle
top.
Up some of these and put those on top. This would be a great addition to a cheese board. Alongside, nuts and crackers and all those crunchy things we put on cheese boards, or just a handful with a glass of rosé. Lots of folks in my Milk Street class had young children, and they were talking about having these for snacks, which I think is a great idea. But we are going to get these in the bowl, let them cool a little bit, and then
salads with
instead of a crouton.
Yes, yes.
All right, we'll let these cool a little bit and taste these and serve them to our guests.
Sounds great.
All right, our chickpeas are ready, and wine has suddenly made its way here, which I love that, day drinking. Okay, they're cooled off now, and we can give them a try. So I'm going to start with yours, because I know mine is going to be spicy.
So I have the wine.
Garlicky, and then the maple hits you. That's really fun. I like
the heat. I want this on a kale salad.
And that salt is perfect.
Now the heat really is coming in.
From the Burberry? Yeah, you need a sip?
I have to cleanse my palate.
Fenugreek is what hits me first. Again, that, like, butterscotch note is what I always get from that.
And watch that heat. It's coming right now.
Yep.
Feel it?
Cheers. Thanks, Lily. This was fun. Thanks, guys.
Thanks so much for listening to Smidgen. Thank you to Rosie. Thank you to Lily, and thank you to our live audience at Podcast Live. We had a blast. We have been nominated on Discover Pods Awards in 2 categories. Please head on over and vote for us. We're going to link to that in our show notes. Smidgen is available on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, and now on Pandora. Please subscribe and listen. You can find everything about Red Stick Spice at redstickspice.com or head over to smidgenpodcast.com to learn about Smidgen and check out the show notes for everything we mentioned in this show. Another episode is coming out next week. We cannot wait to see you there. Bye.